Welcome to another episode of Tank Talks, your personal think tank for all things startups and venture capital. I'm your host, Matt Cohen, founder and managing partner at Ripple Ventures. On today's show, we welcome Spencer Dent, founder of Clozd, to discuss how startups can better forecast sales and understand why they win and lose deals. Spencer shares his journey growing up in a family of 7 siblings in Utah and how he had the sales drive ingrained in him at an early age. We dig into his time at Bain Consulting and how that shaped his ability to focus on processes and frameworks for solving problems as an entrepreneur. Next, Spencer explains how his time at Qualtrics, the hot Utah-based tech company, shaped his understanding of sales strategy and operations, and how it led him to starting Clozd with his fellow Qualtrics colleague Andrew as a bootstrap company in 2017. Finally, we get Spencer to share the best strategies startup founders can use to increase win-loss ratios and the best questions to ask customers who do and do not close when doing customer interviews. But before we get started today, as our listeners probably know by now, the team at Ripple is always focused on helping our founders and portfolio companies find the best partners to work with. And when it comes to corporate finance and cash management, there's nobody we recommend more than the team at Jeeves. At Ripple, we manage all our fund expenses and employee credit cards using Jeeves. The team at Jeeves helped me get my team set up with physical and virtual cards in days. I was able to allow my teammates to expense items in multiple currencies, allowing them to pay for anything, anywhere, at any time. We weren't asked for any personal guarantees or to pay any setup or monthly SaaS fees. Not only does Jeeves save us time, but they also give us up to 3% cash back on our purchases, including expenses like Google, Facebook, or AWS every month. The best part is Jeeves puts up the cash and you settle once every 30 days in any currency you want, unlike some other corporate card companies that make you prepay every month. Listeners of Tank Talks can get set up today with a demo of Jeeves and take advantage of our Tank Talks special with a $250 sign-up bonus and skip the waitlist that already has thousands of companies waiting on it by visiting tryjeeves.com/tanktalks. Use referral code TANKTALKS to get set up today. Now let's jump into the tank for this week's episode with Spencer Dent, founder of Clozd. Thanks for joining us in the tank today, Spencer.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
You know, Spencer, you've gotten a pretty impressive background, especially when it comes to sales and demand generation. But before we jump into the good stuff, it would be great if you can give our audience a brief introduction on yourself and how you ended up working in startups and technology.
Yeah, it's funny. So my background, I'm pretty entrepreneurial by nature. I had to learn how to work and take care of myself at a pretty young age. I actually started my first company when I was an undergrad at BYU, ran that company for a few years, and I went to business school at Duke. And then I went to Bain, and I loved Bain from the perspective of you could learn lots of different problems. And when, as most consultants, you get about 2 to 3 years in and you say, I don't think I want to make PowerPoints for the rest of my life. And so when that happens, you start thinking like, all right, what do I want to do? And when it came time to leave Bain, I looked at different options, and there was just a pull back to, small business. And at the time, there was this survey company based out of Utah that nobody had heard of called Qualtrics. And they were looking for somebody with my background that was willing to move to Utah. And from Utah, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So that kind of pulled me back into it. And then, ever since that, it's the right fit for me. Like the freedom and creativity that you get in startups versus like the bureaucracy in bigger companies is a better fit for my personality. So that's kind of how I got back. I started there, went and did kind of more of the corporate thing, got pulled back into it. And now, we left and started Clozd, and we're running. It's fun.
Yeah, it sounds like the same story you hear with all, ex-consultants. They go to the corporate ladder, they're done with making PowerPoints, and they want to get back to making fun stuff for people that people enjoy. But I got to ask, what was the first business you actually started about before you went to business school?
So really funny. I served an LDS mission in Brazil, came home the 4th of 7 kids. My family didn't have a lot of money, so I had to put myself through college. And the job that would pay me the most, that would allow me to still go to college full time, was to be a lead gen outsourced appointment setter for a mortgage company. And it sucked.
Oh my!
Dude. It was the hardest. Like, think I'm hooked to a dialer and I'm just calling people all night, every night. I'd work from like 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. calling people all across America, and it was rough, but I was pretty good at it because I like talking to people. Pretty quickly, I ended up running the night shift of that team, and the mortgage company that we worked for, we were overflowing them with demand because interest rates at the time were so low. They were like the same rate that they are actually right now today. They've even gone lower. Me and another guy decided, hey, these guys, we're creating so much demand for this individual company. We should just go start our own and do this for lots of more companies. So that's how we ended up doing it. It was like working part-time while I was in college, ended up hiring a bunch of people. It was a great lesson. Running a call center is actually a really hard job. But we did that for a few years after and built it up. But I felt a little stagnant there. Like I could do more and I could learn more if I went and did something else. And I'd seen folks that I knew go to like consulting, for example. And I was like, oh, well, let's do that. How do I get into that? And that's what took me to Duke and eventually to Bain.
That's awesome. The old smile and dial, pedigree is something that a lot of people don't have in sales. And I had it myself. I worked at a telemarketing firm, which was not a great, experience, but it also was a hard experience. And I learned a lot about having to get through those first couple calls, following the call sheet and then seeing yourself, survive the first few weeks is important in sales, right?
Totally. It's like, one of those fad, cool words that everybody uses in business nowadays is grit. If you can do that job and last, you have grit. You're going to be able to handle life and whatever life throws at you. And that was, that's exactly what that is. You just got to get knocked down, get back up, get knocked down, get back up. So, it was a good kind of character building experience, I think, for me and a lot of people I worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. But your time at Bain must have been pretty incredible. It had a pretty impactful, impact on your career path. I have to say, as I know so many other consultants that have gone down that path before, and I always say to them, if I ever had to tell my next, self coming out of college, what should you do? If you want to join the corporate world, I'd always say starting in consulting is the best place because you have so much breadth of exposure to so many great companies and problems that need to be solved that it's also so impactful in what you can do next. But for you, what was it that you did at your time at Bain that you still rely on today that had a big impact on your career moving forward?
I love this question because it's actually, to me, the reason why you should go into it is when you do strategy consulting, the nature of that job is learning how to thoroughly understand and break down a problem into its component parts and then go solve that problem. I think people get misconstrued in their head of like what you actually do. Like most of what you're doing is spending time really understanding a problem, breaking it down in like a linear logical components and then solving it. And so literally last Friday, I met with a person on our like operations team and we were talking about one of the problems that we're facing and how can we get more efficient in certain ways. And I wrote up the decision tree framework that I learned at Bain. So and I use that I use it at Qualtrics. I've used it at Clozd, and it's really learning how to break down a problem into its component parts and then figure out which parts, if you solve them, bring the most value to the company. So that to me is the most valuable set. You learn how to talk to people, you learn how to present, all of those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the most valuable source is actually learning how to understand a problem very well and communicate the problem and the solution to people. And it's fun. Like if you're intellectually curious and you like problem solving and that kind of stuff, it's a great job.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, I literally just thought about my first startup when we brought in our good friend who was a consultant at Accenture to lead our growth team. And he had that matrix on day one ready for us to attack. And it made us such a better company. It actually is the reason why we ended up selling the company to Yelp. And so I totally understand why learning that problem process solution framework is so important. You joined Qualtrics, though, and you were the lead on the sales strategy and implementation team. And you also helped expand operations across the globe. Well, I believe introducing a ton of new channels and products for several years. So what was it like watching your team grow from like 2 to over 30 in 18 months? And, how did you find yourself scaling as a leader alongside them?
Yeah, it's I worked with a lot of great people at Qualtrics. My role there was people ask me and I did a lot of different things, and there's awesome people at Qualtrics. One of the things that my role there, people ask me what I did first kind of 2 years that I was at Qualtrics, and the best way to describe it was I was kind of the pit for the global head of sales. And that led to everything from making big decisions about like where in the world should we put offices? How many people should we put in those offices? Should we be putting an inside sales team or an enterprise sales team? Is there an opportunity for channel partners? It's a very different thing to set up a go-to-market organization in Japan than it is to set one up in Australia if you're a United States company. Versus, when you go to Europe, you can kind of sell to some of the other countries from a home base, whether that's in Benelux or London or Dublin, wherever it happens to be. So just learned a ton about, as you approach these problems, there are opportunities to kind of copy paste, and there's other areas where you can't do that. So like making big strategic decisions was a big deal. But another part of it that I learned was it all came down to people and getting the right leaders with the right direction and leadership and accountability that could trickle down to the very front lines. That's what it all came down to. It didn't matter if you could have all the right answers on paper, but people are ultimately the answers, and their ability to execute and get stuff done is all that matters. So
you started, explaining basically your role at Bain, consulting and strategy as a way to kind of kickstart the decisions on where you would go and build out the Qualtrics team. But then you ended with, it all matters about the people, which is so opposite of like, hey, there's processes, but then it all comes down to people and emotions and humans. And so how did you end up kind of crossing that chasm of understanding where it's like, okay, this process, this matrix can only take me so far, and now I got to go with my gut on people, because there's no formula for that, right?
I laugh about this a lot, right? Because like culture and people is like the generic answer that I feel like a lot of people give because it can kind of cover everything, if that makes sense. But I went to 4 years of undergrad business school, like business degree. I went to 2 years of an MBA. I worked in a management consulting firm. And to be totally my take, and maybe this is a controversial take, those things did not prepare me how to lead people. They prepared me how to think about business problems, and they gave me like functional discipline. Like I understood concept of marketing, concepts of operations, concepts of strategic problem solving. But it's a really different thing to, come up with the right marketing plan versus instill that vision in the mind of somebody that works with you, come up with the right metrics, hold them accountable to those metrics, have difficult conversations if a person's not performing. Like you can't learn that stuff in books and in school and in theoretical situations. The only way you learn that stuff is doing it, So at the end of the day, realizing that like the best answer on paper is worth nothing. The best answer implemented is where you get value. So that was a great experience for me that's one thing I loved about consulting was when I could actually work with my clients to drive impact. And, making big presentations and walking through around a table wasn't nearly as cool as like walking on a job site with a commercial construction company that was my client at Bain. I love that. And like talking through different ways that they could improve the way they build a skyscraper. Like that was way cool. And I felt like way more impactful than like, let's make this chart 3 different versions of it and see if the insights pipe a little.
So the PowerPoint just really took its toll on you, and you realized that it couldn't only take you so far.
It becomes a crutch, man. It becomes a crutch. It's one of the funniest things in the world to watch when you hire someone who has like a consultant or a banking background and you bring them into a role and notice that they like are incredibly uncomfortable to talk to you without a slide. And you have to like deprogram that from their behavior. Like, dude, just give me the 3 points. Give me the 3 things that matter, and then we'll go.
And that's why Bezos got rid of PowerPoint slides at Amazon, obviously, because he just saw it didn't bring out the best in people, which is something that you end up realizing. And in early 2017, you launched Clozd with your co-founder, Andrew Peterson, because you obviously saw there was an opportunity to like digitize and implicitly streamline the win-loss ratios that you were probably seeing at your time at Qualtrics. But in spite of obviously leaving a IPO-bound Qualtrics, which was one of Utah's hottest tech companies, must have been a hard decision. How did you and Andrew finally make the leap?
It was a super hard decision. we love Qualtrics. Like we owe Qualtrics a lot, and we're grateful for the opportunity we had to work there. And everything we learned and the people we got to work with. We're still great friends. My boss at Qualtrics, John DiAgostino, is on the board of Clozd today. So we've pulled lots of and continue to have great relationships with them. And it was hard to leave. It wasn't an easy decision. It was one of these things where it was like, guaranteed if we stay here, we're going to go through this IPO. There's huge financial rewards for us and like these like validating stamps on our personal resumes about this experience. And it was one of those things, but the way we founded Clozd, like how it came to be was this. Qualtrics is the feedback company. Like they're the very best in the world at going out and collecting surveys from thousands and millions of people, aggregating that and giving it to big B2C companies particularly. And we're at Clozd, and one of the challenges we're at Qualtrics, and one of the challenges we were running into was we didn't understand why we won and lost deals. Like we didn't understand it. And, you're opening up offices in Europe, you're opening up offices in Asia Pacific, you're introducing new product lines, you're selling deals that are of a magnitude and deal size that you've never sold before. And you don't it's just muscles you haven't flexed before, and you don't understand why you're winning and losing. And we realized that the value of getting that feedback for a B2B sales, go-to-market, and product development, you think of all of that, was enormous. And it was kind of like that movie Inception, where an idea gets planted in your brain and you can't get it out. That's what happened with us with Clozd. Is like Andrew and I started thinking about this and thinking of all the applications, and basically every B2B organization that has a professionals team that is tracking sales opportunities eventually is going to ask two questions. Where do we win and lose? What's our win rate, and why? And so it's inevitable that this is going to become a huge practice across companies. And so we just realized the opportunity cost is too big to not do this. And it was hard, man. We quit. We walked. We didn't pay ourselves for a year, left a lot of equity on the table, and went and worked out of my basement. Like stepped over my daughter's Barbies to get into this basement bedroom where we worked for the first year. But within a few months, we started winning clients and big clients, like Adobe Marketo and Avalara and Tableau and Qualtrics all came to be our clients within kind of the first 9 months of Clozd. And that helped us even feel more emboldened that we'd done the right thing. And here we are 5 years later, and we don't regret the decision at all. Like we miss a lot of the fun people and some of those day-to-day relationships you get, but the ability to go build this has been incomparable to anything else.
Fuck, I love that journey. And I love the way you kind of went through the emotional roller coaster that you had to do with your partner, Andrew, and finally get to, starting something alongside those Barbies in the basement while everything else was probably, looking up and to the right. You guys weren't sure where it was going to take you.
Here's a funny thing on that front. The other day we had an all hands meeting where we announced our Series A, where we raised $52 million from some awesome investors. And it was funny because we had our staff where we just crested over 100 employees, and we're all talking about, the mentality it took now versus the mentality it took to start Clozd. And I said, let's give a lot of credit to our initial seed investors, who are Andrew and our spouses, who like straight up funded this thing by saying, hey, through savings and our own discipline over the first year, we're going to sacrifice a little bit, get this thing off the ground. And like psychologically, man, that's tough, And I get that for founders. It's kind of one of the hardest things is like there's a risk involved here. One thing I would say is I think the risk is never as bad as you think it's going to be. Like the downside, you're never really going to go to zero, But you think a lot about zero, and you don't necessarily, and you almost psychologically don't think, what's the real probability and what's the true upside? And so at least myself and other founders I've talked to, like in those early days, that paranoia about making sure you don't go to zero is real. And that just makes you work harder so that you improve the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell my team all the time, like my first investor has been my wife because she's the one paying the bills and I haven't taken a salary yet from this venture fund business because it doesn't pay much until 10, 20 years out from now. So I totally agree with that on the spouses front. But, you've spent your whole life in sales and now you're obviously building an incredible company with Clozd to help companies understand their win-loss ratios. And that's the topic we're going to get into today, how startups can best forecast sales and the strategies they can adopt to understand why they win and why they lose, and how they can turn those learnings into lessons that their entire organization can benefit from. So can you walk us through the typical journey an early stage startup goes through when building out a sales team and the mistakes you always see startups making?
Yeah. So we work with a lot of different companies, right? Like our clients on the high end, we have companies like Salesforce and Microsoft, right? These are far from startups. On the low end, we have like seed round, Series A, venture-backed companies really trying to figure out how to grow. There's a couple of mistakes I see that happen. One, they raise too fast with that and inflate and overbuild their go-to-market engine without having product market fit. That's one of the most common mistakes, and it's a very visible mistake of like, hey, we hired all these people and then we had to let 40% of them go because we're not actually getting traction. But rule number one, make sure you have product market fit. And the way I would define product market fit is people who buy and buy again, right? They renew with your solution. If you're a SaaS solution or whatever it happens to be, they buy and they buy again. The second thing would be to don't take your eye off the ball. Know really who your core customer is and be relentless in your focus to serve your core customer. Too many companies try to get too broad too soon, and they water down their go-to-market engine by trying to sell to too many verticals or too many segments or too many. And in the process of doing that, they waste a ton in their go-to-market. So find out who the product market fit is, who are the people, who's the ICP, who are the people who are buying you over and over, and be relentless on going after that until you feel like you have built up and are serving them well enough that it makes sense to let's branch out. That's definitely one. The other mistake I see happen is as you go up that ladder, as a founder, this is your life's work, right? This is who you are. This is what you're doing. You dream about it. You think about it. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're involved on the deals. So you actually have a decent understanding of how buyers are reacting to you and how they're perceiving your solutions. As your business grows, you get detached from that. Like you have to, you start to have to do other things that are up above that. And the danger zone that exists there then is you start to make decisions without the knowledge of what's happening on the front line. Just honestly, like the value prop of win-loss is let's understand in a systematic, scalable way what's happening down on the front line of our sales motion and have that influence us about the decisions we make. So it's nail your product market fit, stay focused, and as you scale that up, don't lose sight of like the front line experience, because that makes the biggest difference of your ability to continue to scale and make right decisions. Because as that boat gets, the metaphor, as that ship gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's harder to turn.
Absolutely. Yeah. Spencer, we see no matter whatever industry a founder or sales leader is in, the go-to-market challenges they face are all the same, whether it's increasing sales productivity, introducing new products, decreasing new ramp time, and entering new geographies. Trying to align all those resources and investments takes a lot of time. And so many sales leaders just go with their gut, or they go off anecdotal evidence on why they win or don't win deals. I've seen this firsthand myself as a sales leader. So, why has this problem persisted for so long? And why hasn't anyone tried to solve it yet with software?
It's a hard problem. It's a really hard problem, and one of the, so there's a couple of parts. It's a hard problem, and the problem impacts multiple people within the organization. And so you see situations where, for example, the sales team tries to address this by having drop down in their CRM, and maybe they might understand a little bit about it, but most of the time reps don't fill it out, all, etc. The product marketing team or the marketing team, the CMO wants to understand this because for them, it helps them figure out how can they better market, message, position themselves, things like that. And they're like, oh, let's go talk to buyers. And the product team wants to understand these things too. So one of the things that I see that happens in this space is it's really, really dangerous for companies to try to solve this or departments to try to solve this in isolation, right? But the problem has persisted forever, right? Like I'll give you guys the first time I remember a win-loss issue pop up, and it's visceral, right? You guys have probably seen this yourselves. I had a client while I was at Bain. They had spent 2 years chasing a contract that was a monster contract, right? You hear of elephant deals, like elephant-sized deals. This is a blue whale-sized deal. 2 years chasing it. And during that time, I was working with their business development and sales leaders on how they could improve their sales processes. And they lost this deal. And it wasn't like, oh, we knew it writing on the wall. It was like blindside, like we thought we were going to win it. And it was devastating. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm fresh out of business school, academic, nerdy consultant. And the question that comes to my head is like, how often does this happen to companies? And 2 years, the types of people that they had chasing this deal were like, they're expensive resources. And they got nothing in return for it. Like, crap, that sucks. But then what do? It's like, oh, we got to just move on to the next one. So that's one reason why the problem's persisted so long is there hasn't been a simple, scalable, repeatable way to understand this for companies, which is what our aim as a business is to do, is to help companies understand that. Like if you can understand why you win and lose systematically, it makes it easier. So that's kind of the whole mission of Clozd.
Everyone always says if it doesn't happen in Salesforce, it never happened, right? It's always the system of record, source of truth. But a lot of the stuff that's in Salesforce is kind of garbage in, garbage out, right? Like those drop downs on why you lost a deal, there's 5 or 7 and maybe like 20% of them are actually spot on. There's not really a lot of variability allowed in there. And also a lot of people are just trying to get through, the losses and put them in Salesforce, and then just, you're right, go back to the top of the funnel and do it over and over again, or blame marketing or blame success or something else. So I understand it's a big problem. It's a hard problem to solve. But, there's also the forecasting side, which a lot of sales teams have a hard time struggling with. Most of the times they say, well, if we got to meet our forecast, let's just increase headcount, throw more bodies at the problem. But often they neglect the value of winning more deals with a team they already have. And so I often see founders picking generic reasons for why deals are ultimately won or lost, and they never really analyze them deep enough to change the outcome for the next time around, like that big whale with that customer you're working with at Bain. So what advice would you give to sales leaders when they're trying to analyze their losses to better understand how they can improve their win rates next time?
It's as important to understand why you win and why you lose. And I'll give you an example. If you hear this from anybody in your organization, we lose because of price. That is a weak answer. You can't do. What am I supposed to do? Are you telling me I just need to cut my prices across the board? Or are you telling me that my pricing model's messed up? Or are you telling me we didn't communicate enough value on the deal? So your point is spot on. Like that surface level garbage answer is really weak. And I think people should be held accountable when they come with weak answers for why you're winning and losing. Like you need to get under the hood and really understand that. One of the best ways I heard this explained was the other day, actually, I was talking to a COO of a client of ours, and he said, one of the things that I love about Clozd is it helps me go from the clouds all the way down to the dirt. And that's how win-loss needs to be done. It can't just be, hey, we lose on price. But so that's big picture. Pricing's an issue. Like when I look across all my deals, pricing's coming up the most on deals that we lose. What does that actually mean? And going and getting the data all the way down, deal by deal, specifically what that means. And one thing to make sure that we totally cover here, Matt, is guess what? Your reps don't know. Don't ask, like you can ask your reps, but the real reasons why you win and lose is in the minds of the buyers. So don't over-index on what your reps are telling you, because two things. One, buyers don't tell the reps always and aren't frankly clear always why they win and lose. And two, reps don't thoroughly think through it, or sometimes they lie about why they win and lose because they don't want to tell you that I blew it, man. The demo sucked. So, but to your point, right? If I can go through and I can say, look, the number one reason why we're losing deals is because our pricing model doesn't work for companies once we get over a certain size. And so actually our entry level price point is totally comfortable. They like it. It's actually less than other people, but they're forecasting out, and our competitors are doing a good job of telling this to them that in 2 years we're going to be more expensive. And they see that and they say, oh, okay, it's price. But you have to understand the nuance of it's not the price, it's the way the price is dictated. And that's a different problem to solve than just let's cut our prices. So understanding really specifically the details from the buyer perspective on why they are doing what they're doing is the key. And it's one of those things where, like, to your point, right, you can have a drop down in Salesforce that says product gaps or whatever it happens to be. If you don't know what those are, you can't do anything about it. And so not only are you wasting your time talking about it, you're wasting the time of your sales team asking them to fill that out. You're wasting your time of your Salesforce admins putting that drop down in place in the first place. There's just waste across the board. So think really hard when you go to solve win-loss. How do you make sure that you get the right level of information in a systematic, scalable way so that you can actually make concrete decisions?
Yeah, it's kind of like the tree branch method. If it's price that you're clicking on is the loss reason, then that should take you to another question of like, well, what about price? The flexibility, the variability, the usage-based pricing versus the fixed fee pricing. And then after that, it's like, well, what segment of the market are they sitting in? Like, keep drilling down into each one of those so you can get to the real answer, which is exactly what Clozd does, which you really try to help build the framework for win-loss reviews. So maybe you can explain to us, like, take it back a bit. What do you mean by win-loss reviews, and what kind of outcomes should founders really aim for with that?
Win-loss is the process of systematically understanding your deals and why you win and lose deals. The best source of that information is your buyers. You go to your buyers. So how do you do this, right? One way of doing it is you could survey your buyers. Just go out to them, survey them, ask them a simple question. Know this, B2B buyers they have budget, which means they tend to be busy people, high up in organizations. They're not going to spend 20 minutes filling out a survey for you. They're going to spend 3 minutes filling out a survey for you. So if you are going to survey a B2B buyer, that survey needs to be quick, fast, surface level. What did you do? And I'm going to go 2 clicks. I didn't like your pricing. What was it about our pricing? And get out. So Clozd helps our clients do that. If they have thousands and thousands and thousands of deals going through pipeline, we have technology that allows you to do that. The more common way we see B2B companies attack this, because they tend to have bigger deals that are more complex, is through more of an interview methodology, right? So these are 2 different things. One's a screwdriver, one's a hammer. An interview is more of a nuanced conversation that where you peel the onion like you just described, right? So you ended up choosing us. Why were we the right choice for you? And the buyer says, well, you guys it was clear you had all the product functionality we needed, and your pricing was really competitive, and the sales process was just much easier. And then I would ask as the interviewer, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Why, and drill into those different things to uncover and peel that out. But the point here is these 2 methods are independent of one another, and you're not using them both the same way. Like the way I would describe it, like the analogy I would give you is a survey is like when you go to the grocery store and you put your arm in the blood pressure machine and you get a number that pops up that tells you like you have high blood pressure, and you're done, right? Like, okay, I have high blood pressure. I should probably go figure out what I should do about that. But it's more of like a quick pulse. An interview is going and getting a physical. right? An interview is like going and sitting down and being like, oh man, I'm getting my blood tested. I'm doing the whole deal. And the key to this, the best way to approach this is you go to your buyers and you think very thoughtfully about your pipeline and should I be interviewing, should I be surveying, or should I be doing both? How do I do that in a scalable way so that the feedback comes into a single place, is analyzed, aggregated, and pushed out to my organization?
Yeah, I was thinking more like McDonald's drive-through, drive-by versus a nice steak dinner with a white tablecloth where you have 3 hours to really talk about stuff. But the physical works just as well.
That's 100% perfect way to think about it. Like another way to think about it is this. I use an interview when a deal is meaningful, highly strategic, big deal size, new product line that we're launching. There's a big investment going into it, and I really need to understand that. I use a survey when this is bread and butter. We understand this, and we can just get in and out and see if anything's changing. We have clients that have 60,000 deals go through pipeline. It is economically not feasible to try to interview all of those people. We can survey a lot of them, and then we'll interview hundreds of them, hundreds of the 60,000, right? We'll go in and grab pockets and they'll say, hey, there's this new competitor that's popped up in Europe that we need to go understand. Can you guys go interview them? Interview deals against them. Or we launched this new product and we're struggling to get traction with it. Can you go interview them? Or, hey, we're seeing disproportionate win rates. We're winning more against these certain clients or in this certain pocket. Can you go help us understand why we're winning more there? So you use an interview for those more like nuanced, I want to dig deep, and you use a survey to cover it. Another example, I love analogies, dude. If you talk to anybody at Clozd, they tell you that I just talk in analogies. Use a survey to skim the top of a pool. Use an interview to go to the deep end, like to go all the way down and fix the drain.
You're just full of analogy. I love it. I would just love to sit in the town hall and hear them all come out. But just to give me, you said you have customers that do 60,000 closes a year. Then you've got some that do maybe 600. So for a lot of our listeners, it's mostly around like, the seed, Series A, Series B, growth stage, venture-backed companies. What type of interviewing questions should sales leaders think about? What are the right questions to ask, whether they don't close or do win a customer?
Dude, great question. The answer is you ask the same questions regardless. So for example, if I am doing a win-loss survey, this is a structured form that I'm not going to change, right? I'm going to send it out via email. I'm just going to ask, what were the main reasons why you wanted to choose us? What were the main reasons why you didn't want to choose us? And you design that in a way where it's like, pricing was good or pricing was bad. Product was good or product was bad. And if you're doing an interview, you ask the questions and you approach the interview from that neutral state of, tell me what your perspective was on the product. Well, I like these things. I didn't like these. Your UI sucked. It looked like it was built in 1985, but your product functionality and all the stuff it could do was really strong. And you drill into that. But the reason why you do it that way, Matt, is it allows you to be able to say, these are the things that people think about when they choose us. These are the things that they're thinking about. And then how we, like this is their grading sheet, right? And we call those decision drivers. These are the things that they are scoring us on and how we scored. And that allows you to look and say, when we win, these are the things that go really well. When we lose, these are the things that go really poorly. I've seen this happen, quick story for you. I've seen this happen with clients where they just focus on losses and they're like, we're losing because the pricing model example. Our pricing model sucks. Like these buyers aren't choosing us because they are scared about how their price is going to increase in year 2, year 3, and we need to go change our pricing. But they like how it's set up, that you go look at the wins and you see the opposite. They're choosing us because they like how our pricing model will scale with their business, some 3-year contract that it's easy to fund.
Spencer, I'd really like to get into how Clozd actually works and make sales teams more efficient. You guys integrate with a company's software or CRM system like Salesforce, but how many other data points are you guys really collecting that are proprietary to Clozd that you wouldn't get from a system of record like Salesforce?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So just walk through the workflow. Okay. I'm a sales rep. Here's how Clozd works. I have an opportunity I'm chasing with Matt Cohen. I win or lose the deal and I mark it as closed, right? If you're doing this in an automated fashion, which most of our clients choose to do it this way, automatically that deal will be passed to our system. From there, we have all of the information about that deal. We also know who Matt Cohen is, and we have your email address, and we will reach out to you to schedule time to do a win-loss interview or to complete a win-loss survey. So that's an automated workflow. Now, going back to kind of what we were talked about a few minutes ago, you can set rules in Clozd to say, hey, Matt is a priority deal. We want to interview him. Or, hey, Matt is a bread and butter, right down the middle, like pulse check deal. We want to survey him. We go out, we reach out to you, we collect that feedback. When you talk about the proprietary information, the information we really generate and gather is the information that's in your head as the buyer, right? We also, let's say that there's a sales rep on the team that sold to you. We can go and collect their input on the deal as well. So think the deal gets closed and we can fan out and go collect feedback from the representative buyers about why they did what they did. Then our system pulls that information back together, and our methodology that underlies this, how you ask the questions, how do you code the questions, how do you gather the feedback, analyzes the feedback, and then distributes that out to the organization. So if I'm your sales leader, Matt, I could get an interview in my inbox 4 days later that says, here's the feedback from Matt Cohen on why he did or didn't choose Clozd. But also a month from now, I can get a report pushed to me that says, hey, based off the last 75 deals that have been analyzed, these are the main reasons why we're winning and losing.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's like a two-way NPS rating on the sales leader or the sales BDR, SDR, and the actual buyer that is delivered to the leadership team, which nobody has information on. That's so proprietary.
Yeah, totally. So the cool part about it is we're collecting the feedback out of the minds of the buyer, and we have your CRM data to blend that with so that you can then go look and say, like, okay, so I have this pool of feedback. Let me go cut that by different parts of my business, because I have the account level, like industry information on all the feedback, or I have even the sales rep or the product lines that were being sold. So if I'm a product leader, I might not really care how good of a sales rep was on the deal. I just want to know for my product, what are the buyers saying, so I know what things to go prioritize in roadmap. So that's an awesome component of Clozd is as that data set starts to build up, it becomes super, super valuable to you. So it's super exciting because companies end up guessing if they don't have this.
Yeah, it's two-way source of truth, really, not one-way source of truth, which is usually the SDR just putting it into Salesforce and then you saying that's the truth. Really, it could be the opposite one the buyer's saying.
One of the things that we find is this. If in the absence of buyer feedback, we listen to the rep. But if we have buyer feedback, that trumps it, right? Like they're the ones who made the decision. And so it's cool to be able to actually compare those two things head to head. Like our sales team missed majorly on this. Or, you know what? Our sales team was totally in tune as to why we lost this deal. And that's a beautiful thing as a sales. Like one of the coolest things that we see at Clozd is our clients using that delta on the rep feedback versus what the buyers are saying to drive their sales enablement roadmap. Our sales reps aren't listening to our buyers or our demos aren't. We are saying that we're doing an awesome job on the demo. The buyers are saying that we're not, and they're saying that it's not customized to their needs, that it's confusing. Let's go address that in how we train our reps. So it's an interesting thing to collect those two sources of feedback.
That's super interesting. And I can't wait to see how much Salesforce would pay to buy this, actually, to get access to both the buyer's, mindset as well as what the, sales teams are saying about their own sales capabilities. But besides the software platform at Clozd, I understand that you offer some consulting services to help with tasks such as designing win-loss analysis programs, conducting buyer interviews, administering surveys, and developing summary reports. So can you tell us a bit why you decided to include a managed service product in your product offering?
Yeah, people always ask me, like, how much of Clozd is like this service consultant component versus like the technology. And I say to them, that's like asking me how much of my bowl of spaghetti is noodles versus meat and sauce. The reality is win-loss is a new and emerging practice. And people need thought leadership and guidance on how to approach this. Think of the consultant. In SaaS terms, our consultants are like very strategic CSM reps, right? Like a very strategic customer success manager that helps you set up your program and they help you manage the program end to end. They can provide feedback to you and input on like, should you be surveying or interviewing? What should you be asking in your interview questions? All of those things. And most of our clients opt to have the consultants conduct the interviews on their behalf. And the reason why is it's easier to be transparent with a third party. So most of our clients, like you have the ability on Clozd if you want to, hey, I just need your software that can schedule, conduct, transcribe, like aggregate and push the feedback out. And I want to do the interviews myself. We have clients that do that. Most of our clients say, you know what? Like Clozd has really, really smart consultants that understand this and do this for a living. And they know how to interview and they know how to interview well. And they're going to go get better feedback from me than I will myself. And so that's actually a really cool component is those consultants essentially are an extension of your team. And so like I'll get like walk this out in like a really practical way, Matt. I'm a vice president of product marketing at a company and I've been assigned to be in charge of win-loss. And so if I do this myself, I then stand up in front of the sales team, the product leadership team, the marketing team, and the executive team once a quarter or whatever. And I read out to them why they're winning and losing. That's a really uncomfortable conversation, by the way. Like, hey, the product sucks on these fronts, right? Like, I don't want to, politically, that's a dangerous conversation for me to be the person like leading. One of the reasons why people like to have Clozd and this consultant is the consultant can be the one that does that. Like, dude, I have no dog in the fight. I don't even work for you guys. My job is just to stand up here and represent your buyers as an independent third party. And this is what they're saying. So that thought leadership, the expertise, a lot of people that are trying to do this for the first time, they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know how to approach it. So they really lean on Clozd for that. But also it kind of helps you ingest the feedback better into your organization when you know it's being done by an independent third party who has no agenda.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And it also breaks down that barrier of like the skepticism around, is this really authentic data? Was the person really coerced into giving us this, this feedback? It's way more organic and natural the way that you just presented it as not really a managed service, but as a mediator almost in between the two parties to make sure you get the most authentic data to use in your, learnings and lessons as an organization, which is really cool to hear. I've also read, that when you started this thing, you were profitable and cash flow positive, basically since the beginning in 2017. So kudos to you on that, and you reported that your gross margin in 2021 was 75%. Which is so cool to see a company bootstrapped and get to this stage, with the support of obviously your spouses. But the biggest news recently, which you mentioned at the beginning, was you had a Series A of 52 million led by Greycroft, along with Madrona and Album VC recently announced. How come you decided to take on additional financing, and what was the sort of framework for going down that path?
I think a lot of founders make the mistake of not having their capital strategy line up to their overall strategy. So they raise too much when they don't need it, or they raise too little when they do need it. As a profitable bootstrap company that's attacking a market that's pretty nascent, like there aren't other companies doing what we do. There's legacy boutique consulting firms that do this, but nobody's kind of taking this technology-driven approach coupled with expert consultants like Clozd is. And that just means that, we had time. Frankly, one of the reasons why people are like surprised to find out that we're a 5-year-old startup. Well, the reason why is for 4 years, we purposely didn't want people to know what we were doing outside of our customers because we wanted to grow profitably, refine our product vision, refine our product, ensure we had that product market fit, and be in a really strong position to really go from second to third and fourth gear. So that's, you ask why we decided to do it now. We're ready. Like we have really strong logos that are renewing. Our clients that were our clients originally in the basement are still our clients. Our product and platform is in a position that we feel like is hard to replicate. And now it's our go-to-market efficiency, like our sales team is hammering and really efficient. So it's kind of like, okay, we've proven out that we have the go-to-market engine, that we have the product market fit. Let's go put some fuel in the tank and go after this really aggressively over the next couple of years. So that's what made sense for us. That might not work for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I sure hope as shit your win-loss ratio and your data is pretty accurate. And you guys must be eating your own dog food.
Close for close is a beautiful thing, right? It's actually one of my favorite things.
Yeah, exactly. But what about the mediator part, the third-party consulting? How do you outsource that for your own customer feedback?
So yeah, that's actually the hardest part. Is we still do our own interviews. We do our own interviews, and that we found you still get great feedback. You just have to make sure that the person clearly articulates at the beginning of an interview, "Hey, we're an independent third. I am not an independent third party, but I am doing this from a place of trying to learn. So please feel free to be as comfortable and open as you want to be."
Just call your old buddies at Bain. I'm sure they'll give you a good discount.
I know. It'll be big. It'll still be expensive.
Fantastic. And how did the pandemic really impact your business? And what are your plans moving forward with all this new capital?
In 2020, when the pandemic hit, at the time we had about 10 employees. That year, when the pandemic first hit, we kind of hit pause like March, April, like from the perspective of we're going to keep selling, we're going to keep trying to go, we're going to keep delivering for our customers, but let's be really thoughtful because we don't know how long the storm's going to last. And because we've been capital efficient, we were able to kind of look at that situation and say, one of my most proud days at Clozd was the day I could say, hey, we have enough cash in the bank and enough cash coming in that every single one of our team members, employees has a job for 18 months. So we were steady going into it. What was interesting was because we were steady and we had a solid foothold in 2020, we doubled our employee base and doubled our revenue base that year. And the second half of 2020, like as the economy tightened, companies realized, oh crap, dude, I need to understand why I win and lose because this is getting even harder and harder to win. So if there's one place I can't cut budget, it's here. So we actually fared pretty well through the pandemic. What's interesting is now as we're seeing the inflation's out of control and other challenges, our base of customers that have been using Clozd, our renewal rates are awesome, like really, really high. And they view this as like a mission critical system for them to weather the storm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The area that I would tell you are, we need to make sure we really nail our messaging is this isn't a budgeted line item thing. Like not every company like has in their line item, like $100,000 to spend on an ongoing win-loss program. And so when you're selling this to somebody for the first time, you really have to build the value and the conviction for them to do this. So that's the area as budgets tighten that we're going to have to just up our game and make sure that every single company we talk to understands that not only is this going to be impactful, it might be the key to them surviving the next 18 to 24 months in this crazy economy.
Yeah, I mean, look, we tell all of our companies that, we're B2B SaaS enterprise. So we always say if you're a source of truth, system of record, you're pretty recession proof, but that doesn't mean you're not replaceable by someone else who's better or cheaper. So you still have to earn that, renewal. But, it's awesome to see that your customers are not only continuing to support you, but also increasing their ACV as well. Even during these tough times in the market. So before we wrap things up, we always ask our guests for their fast favorites. So first off, your favorite podcast.
Favorite podcast. I'm a junkie, man. I for sports. I listen to Jim Rome, Dan Patrick every day while I'm driving home from work, just to see what's happening in the sports world. I love what's going on there.
What was your sport in college?
So I grew up playing. I'm a baseball family. 7 kids in my family, 6 boys, 1 girl. We all played baseball, and we're on the all-star teams and stuff growing up, including my sister. So we love baseball.
That's awesome. You were 2/3 to a starting lineup,
right.
so that's pretty
right.
good. Favorite newsletter?
Honestly, right now, the Clozd newsletter. And here's why. Like our customer newsletter that goes out, we've made such advances on the product front that these guys are kicking out stuff that I'm not even aware of. And I'm like, holy crap, man! The engine's running without me. So I love that. It's awesome to see the progress there.
Oh, fantastic! I gotta check it out. Favorite tech gadget?
My AirPods. It's funny, right? It's like I've had headphones and everything. Moving to AirPods, I was like a late adopter on this front. Moving to AirPods about a year ago, I was like, this is life changing. Like the fact that I can just jump on a phone call really easily, and I don't have to this day, I love it.
Yeah. My wife always says cell phone, wallet, keys, AirPods before you leave the house every day. So they definitely are hitting 80% here on the podcast. Favorite new trend?
It's going to sound like a selfish plug, but it's win-loss. Like,
hey, you got the Clozd, you got the newsletter plug, so you might as well go 2 for 2.
It's crazy to see how people are adopting this. Like 5 years ago, when we first started talking to people about it, it was like, oh, that's interesting. Now it's like our board is mandating that we do this. So it's just cool to see businesses adopting it. And we love that, obviously.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that and pushing for that on the boards that we're on as well. So very cool. Favorite book?
So I like learning about people or situations that like consistently deliver excellence or lead to total disasters, right? So like I'm totally binary on this front. So like on the one hand, right now I'm listening to the book Showtime that HBO series Winning Time's that's about the Lakers. I just finished a book about Coach K. As a Duke alum, I love Coach K and like his just lifetime of commitment to excellence. On the other side, like there's a book called Dreamland by Sam Quinones that's about like the rise of the opioid pandemic in America and how that came to be. And there's another book, Looming Tower, that's about like what led up to 9/11 and all the underlying kind of holes in the system that led to those outcomes. And so I like, what leads to like the best outcomes and what leads to like the, oh shit, we have a disaster on our hands outcome, because I think as a person the very nature of my life's work of win-loss is let's find our strengths and figure out our holes. I tend to just consume content that's along those same lines.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like both sides of the spectrum on the win side and the loss side is ingraining itself in the books you listen to as well. That's awesome. And last but not least, your favorite life lesson.
So I told you we're a baseball family. My family grew up without a lot of money. And one way that we provided groceries to eat, so 7 kids, right? My mom would wake me up early in the morning. I lived in Las Vegas as a kid. And we would go put down basically prep the baseball fields for the Green Valley Little League in Las Vegas, Nevada. And, being an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid and having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning sucked. But that lesson from my mom of like, there's work to do and there's a job to be done and let's go get this done. And when we get it all done, we'll have some money for some bread and milk and cereal. Awesome lesson from my mom of like, work has to be done. Life is about work. People that shy away from work are missing out on the great fulfillment of life.
That's amazing. I love it. I had the same experience with my dad waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the farmer's market to go sell some fruits and vegetables for the day. And so it taught me a lot of great lessons too. And I'm so happy you shared that with us. So thanks for joining us in the tank today with the analogy king himself, Spencer Dent, founder of Clozd.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Tank Talks. To learn more about this episode, be sure to go to Apple Podcast or Spotify to find more detailed notes on this episode or to check out previous episodes. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and a rating as it helps us out a lot. And hit that subscribe button so you can get notified when new episodes come out. Finally, make sure to give me a follow on Twitter @MattyBCohen or @Tank Talk Podcast to stay up to date on new episodes or to be a guest on our show. Till next time,